All right. Well, welcome to this episode of our just training. We're glad you guys are here joining us today. For everybody that's on with us live, our topic today is going to be about social media. This is basically a social media boot camp. My name is Michael. I'm here with Dennis. We're going to talk about some tactics that are recent. Social media is always changing and evolving, so we want to make sure that we can serve you well by keeping you up to date on the latest tactics. Dennis is our guru. He's always aware of what's going on in the social media world, and he's going to bring a couple great things to you today, including Chat GPT that everybody's talking about, and AI, and how do we tap into that as a church. We're also going to be taking a look at the new social media platform called Threads by Facebook. And we're going to be talking about if a church should be using it, or why a church should use it if they should. So if you have any questions, feel free to type that into the chat. In fact, if you would like to even ask a question live, we'll have time for that towards the end. Our presentation today will take about 60 minutes at the most. Like, we actually have about, I don't know, 30, 40 minutes of like stuff that we just want to talk to you about and just inform you with. But if some Q&A will be done by an hour at the most. We want to honor your time. And we're so grateful that you joined us on this call today. So again, my name is Michael Persad. I have a digital studio, basically a branding studio where I help to create brands for churches all across the country. I've teamed up with Dennis Esteman. And Dennis, why don't you take a moment, just introduce yourself?
Yeah, I also run an agency for ministries. I've been working with a lot of church plants over the years. And now I've recently just been moving into this world of tech. In my world, we call it SaaS, right? So software as a service. So again, just developing a bunch of tools that churches can use mainly for free. Michael and I, we partnered on a tool called Canva for Churches. If you're not familiar with that resource, or if you haven't used that resource yet, we put out the beta version of that resource, saw thousands of churches start. That's right, free is good. We saw thousands of churches just start using it. So I would encourage you guys to check out canvaforchurches.com. It's a free design library. We're putting out another free resource that we're going to also show you today called For Churches, where we basically have over, I believe, somewhere close to 500 social media caption templates already in there for you, and it's completely free. So yeah, we've just, I've been on this journey of just helping churches, helping ministries. By my profession, what I'm known for is an organization that I started a couple years back called We Dine Together, and we have clubs and schools all across the United States. So I keep myself pretty busy, but I think where my heart is, it's in the church communication world.
Excellent. So with this episode, we again want to jump into social media. It's basically a boot camp, and we just want to give you some great value. We'll jump right into it. The big challenge with social media, especially when it comes to churches, is that it's ever evolving and ever changing. So we want to keep you up to date with the latest on what's going on, including AI. We're going to talk about that today. Also, give you some practical tips on how to use social media effectively. So again, we work with churches all across the country to help them grow using social media and websites and a bunch of other things. So our hope today is that you walk away with some very practical applications that you can apply at your church. Our heart, our passion is that the local church thrives and prospers, because we know that brings hope to people. So we feel that whenever every one of us is winning in our churches. So we're going to start off with a challenge today. So Dennis, you're going to be kind of driving the ship. I'm going to actually let you share your screen. So you guys make sure that you can take a look at Dennis's screen when he starts to share here. And Dennis, why don't you just unpack the challenge for today?
All right, let me try to share my screen here. Okay. Share screen. We're going to be using the trusty Canva to present today. All right.
If you use Canva, why don't you put yes in the chat? I'm curious how many people use Canva. If you don't use Canva, just say Adobe or Corel Draw, whatever, or Publisher, or whatever it is that you might be using. Just We found Canva to be a great tool. I see a big emphatic yes coming through from Kimberly. So that's great.
Love it. So, all right. So, what is the challenge? And I think we all know the challenge. So, imagine for a second that you have a toolbox, right? And in that toolbox, you have a bunch of tools. You have a bunch of powerful tools in that toolbox, and that these tools are valuable, right? There's no question that these tools are valuable. But the challenge is how to use the tools. Should you use this tool? When should you use the tool? So we have these tools, and I hope that you can see that what I'm talking about is social media. That social media is a great set of tools. I would say digital as a whole is a great set of tools for you to not just promote your ministry, but I guess the big idea that I'm going to talk about is how do we leverage digital and social media to do ministry. So the challenge is, okay, we have this tool that is social media, but it seems like every day there's some new algorithm change. There's all of these different social platforms that we can be using. And so if you're in this communication world, you can be looking and you can be thinking like, hey, like, should I use this tool? Should my church be posting on this platform? And that's what we're going to cover today, right? So we're going to talk about like what social media channels should your church use? What should your church post? And how should your church post? So we're actually not just going to give you a bunch of ideas and head knowledge in this, but we're actually going to get very practical. So that's the challenge, right? Algorithms are changing. There's new social platforms, and it often feels like we have all of these tools, but we don't know what to do with it. So why social media, right? So social media, like I said before, it's not just no longer a photo posting platform, right? If your church is using social media just as a photo posting platform, my hope is that today you would be encouraged to begin making that transitioning. To begin making that transition. So social media is not just a place, again, to promote your ministry, but the idea that I want to get in your minds today, that social media is actually a place for you to do ministry. I remember a couple of years ago, I went to Brazil and we spent about 3 weeks in Brazil doing some missions work. And by the end of the trip, I personally saw about 14 people pray to receive Christ. And that was incredible, right? And I believe, although that's necessary, we can still see the same impact with social media. So when I was launching Oceanside Church alongside my pastor, in the first week of our Next Steps class launch, when people were going through the class, we had about over 12 people raise their hands saying that they found us on social media. They found out about the church on social media. So that's the power of social media. Again, not to just promote your ministry, but to do ministry. So right now, here is what your social media feed should look like, right? So it should be visually pleasing. Now, why a lot of times people ask me, Dennis, why is that important, right? It's important because good graphics, good visuals. The reason why we put out tools like Canva for churches is because good content captures attention, right? Good content captures attention. One of the things that Michael can talk about is as it relates to churches and the church brand. Can you touch on that a little bit, Michael?
Yeah, for sure. There's a great story in the Bible that it kind of unpacks this idea. It's a story about David being chosen. Remember, he's like the brother in the field, and his 7 brothers get chosen by Samuel, and well, they're not chosen; they're rejected by Samuel as being the next king. And they go get David. They bring him in. He's the smallest one, and he asked, "Why didn't you bring David in?" And they're like, "Well, he's the smallest one. We didn't think you'd want to see him." Well, Samuel says something. He says, "The Lord looks at the outward appearance." Or people look at the outward appearance, but the Lord looks at the heart. So there's 2 statements, and both statements are true. If you're in ministry, we know that God looks at the heart, and it's probably why we're in ministry. Like that's why we do what we do. We're fired up by that because God has the power to change lives and change hearts. But the first part's always true, that people look at the outward appearance. So what they see on social media, what they see on the website, it matters. Whether or not they come to experience the gospel, experience the ministry that you're doing at your church, is all dependent on how they perceive you. And if you're not perceived as being relevant, then they don't even show up. They don't even give you a chance to present the message that you have for them. It's very important. People judge a book by its cover. And
That's
if you
right.
can't if you can't relate to them through your photos, your graphics, your social media feed, then that's going to be a problem in trying to get them to come to the church and experience what you have for them.
That's so good, Michael. And that's the key word there is I believe it's perception, right? And I've also done branding. I've consulted large companies like Doritos in my past. And that word brand is equal to that word perception, right? So the reason why we care so much about how things look is because whenever we put something out, we are sharing a story, we are communicating something. Um, so
Yeah,
that's why we talk. Mhm.
just along those lines, just think about it. Companies are spending tens of thousands, hundreds of thousands of dollars to get the look just right. Like companies, businesses understand this. A lot of time in church world, we miss it. Like we think, and you know, this is not a spiritual conversation. Like we're not trying to do this on this thing. This is a you know, we're focusing on the kind of the practical type of thing. So a lot of times from a spiritual perspective, we're relying on God to do all this, all the work. But what we can also realize is that we can do our part, you know, to help people to relate to us and relate to the message that God has for us. Again, I don't want to. If you're on this call, like you get it, like you know that branding, marketing, all this stuff matters. That's why you're on this call. We're not trying to, you know, take God out of any of this. We're actually trying to let God guide us through it and then present
Right.
something that is going to be attractive.
That's right. So just to recap for the people that just signed on. So we're talking about social media. We're talking about the ultimate plan for social media. What channels should you use? What should you be posting? When should you post? We talked about social media being this toolbox. And the problem for a lot of us is we know that these tools are useful, but we just need to know how to use the tools, right? And that's the challenge. And the challenge is that these tools are constantly changing. Just about a week ago, Instagram released Threads, right? So real quick, let's do a quick poll. Just type yes if you've heard of Threads, this new social platform.
Also type no if you have not.
Yeah, if you have not. I just
A
want to
bunch
do
of
a quick poll.
yeses, couple no's. All right.
So basically, Threads is this new platform that pretty much resembles Twitter, right? It's almost like an exact copy. And basically, this new platform was created by Facebook. Now, if you don't know, Facebook owns Instagram as well. So now the way that you access this Threads app is actually through your Instagram profile. Now, what some people don't know is once you create that Threads app, everybody that you were following on Instagram, if they create a Threads account, you will automatically follow them and vice versa. Right now, this is just Instagram's way of trying to get a bunch of people onto the platform. Right. So this is one great example of like, okay, hey, this is a whole nother platform. Like, should my church be using this? Like, how do I even start posting about this? What do I do if my pastor tells me like, hey, we need to start posting Threads, right? So this is what we're going to cover, and this is a great example of the challenge. And in another few months, there's going to be some new algorithm. There's going to be some new platform. So I hope that the principles we teach you today is something that will almost be like a guiding step for you. So that's the challenge, right? But now, what's the opportunity? The opportunity is all major platforms. Now, when I say major platforms, what I'm talking about is I'm talking about Facebook, Instagram, YouTube, and TikTok. I would say those are the four major platforms right now, and I have some numbers to show you later. The four major platforms have all transitioned to focusing on short form video content. Now, why is that an opportunity? I just want to see if anybody in this group knows the answer. why is that an opportunity for churches that these platforms are now focusing on video? Does anybody know? I'd like to see some quick answers on the chat.
By the way, yeah, if you want to type in your major struggle right now, just curious, while you're typing some things, like what is the biggest struggle you have with your social media right now? We'll come at the end and try to answer some of those questions.
Okay, so we have, okay, Kelly says more engaging. People buy into what they see. Our content can easily fit into short videos. We have tons of that's correct. Most churches are already live streaming. That's right. I'll let the answers come in, but that's exactly right. The truth of the matter is we were the first content creators before content creating was a thing. Okay, our pastors have been producing sermons. We've been recording these sermons. We've been putting out these sermons for years. So we've been doing this content thing for a very long time, right? So now, okay, I want to read this. Biggest challenge: thinking of content to post is spiritually relevant, but not alienating to folks who don't attend church. We're going to cover that as well. So the opportunity that's happening now as it relates to this, to social, is something called sermon clips, right? So I see this as such a big opportunity that I actually went and took my whole agency that was previously called Hallelujah Social, and I rebranded that whole entire agency just to be called Sermon Clip, right? I know, so creative.
That's a little bit easier to spell than Hallelujah Social for most people.
Yeah, that's correct. So we rebranded the whole thing to be called Sermon Clips. So now the question is, what are sermon clips? And how do we create this short form video content? So real quick, I'm going to give you the basics so you understand it. The short form video content is just a vertical video, so 9:16. The ideal length for this content is anywhere between 15 to 30 seconds. Right now, I know a lot of people are thinking, how do I take a 50-minute sermon, a 45-minute sermon, and break that down into a 15, 30-second clip? That's impossible. We're going to show you that today. And then the posting frequency of this is a minimum of 3 clips per week. So I'm going to explain this a little bit more. So the reason why sermon clips are so important for churches nowadays, it's because it allows people to start engaging with your content that would have not engaged with your content previously. So just so you guys understand, when your church makes a post on Instagram or on Facebook now, usually less than 13% of your followers are actually seeing the post. This is pre-reels and pre-trends. Less than 13% of your followers are actually seeing your post. So your church, you guys are putting in a lot of time producing this content, but the majority of the people that need to see it actually aren't seeing this content. Now, here are the opportunity with short form video content. Now, these algorithms, they're not showing the content to just people who follow you. They're showing the content to people who the algorithm thinks are gonna want to see that piece of content. So now the question becomes, how do you create content that's engaging? So what we're gonna go and do now, we're gonna go through something that I call the sermon clip formula. And the first thing that starts with is something called the hook. Now, let me explain something. Now, when people are using social media, the way that they use social media is something called the scroll. And a lot of times people find themselves just mindlessly scrolling through the platform. So this idea of the hook is actually what gets the person to stop the scroll, right? So if you want them to pay attention, right, which attention is, I believe, one of the best currencies of today. If you want the person to pay attention to the content that you're putting out, you have to do something to stop the scroll. So now how do you do that? It's within your video or on the video, you have something called a hook. The hook is the engaging or some type of intriguing line about what the video is going to be about. So now one of the questions, one of the challenges that was brought up in the chat is, how do we take these sermons and make them relevant, right, for an audience, but at the same time not alienating the people that's in the church? I think that's the opportunity with the sermon clip. So let's go into this idea of understanding the hook. So if you're scrolling through, let's say, Instagram or Facebook, you see a video, there's two forms of hooks, right? There's an in-video hook. So an in-video hook is, let's say your pastor is preaching and he says a statement like, here's what the Bible says about blank. Or if he asks a question like, what areas in your life are you, right? So those are great examples of an in-video hook. And I guarantee you that there are moments in the sermon where your pastor makes a statement like this, right? Now, if in a perfect world that's not the case, then there's something called the on-screen hook. So let's say if there's no soundbite from your pastor that makes sense, well, you can cut a portion of the teaching. You can cut a portion of the teaching and you can add that video on the screen. You can add that hook on the screen. So I have two examples. Both of them have a on-screen hook, but one of the videos actually had an in-video hook. So one of them is actually my pastor. He says the statement of why you need to Sabbath. And that title is only there for the first couple seconds. And if that person is interested in that, or if the hook is intriguing, that's going to keep them to watch the content. Again, we have a lot of people joining on. We are going through social media. Just a quick recap, we talked about social media being this toolbox, and there's all of these tools, and now we're learning how to use these tools to reach more people, right? So that's the hook. So that's the first part of the sermon clip formula. All great and engaging videos should contain a hook, whether it's in video or whether it's on the screen. Michael, before I move on, you have anything you want to touch on as it relates to capturing attention?
Yeah, so I think just to reiterate what you were saying earlier, like we're trying to do ministry, through a lot of this stuff. So that's perspective, the lens. I think it helps if we keep that lens in our, or if we're looking through that lens, then it makes it make sense. Like, yeah, we want people to hear the main message or see that message as they're scrolling. Just a quick side note, one of our pastors was prompted one day to just put a message out there on one of our social media channels, asking for prayer requests. And it was one of our biggest responses that we've ever had, like at our church, church plant down in South Florida, where people just replied. It was just one of those things where she just felt like she should do it, and people just replied like crazy. And then ministry was able to happen because of that. So anyway, bottom line is that I think what you're talking about is, how do we do ministry? We're not thinking about promotions. We're actually thinking about how do we do ministry by letting people hear that or see that message.
That's right. And again, like the big shift that everybody on this call needs to make is, how do we move away from marketing, telling people to do things, and how do we move into ministry, telling them, serving them, right? So essentially, so we talked about the hook. Now we're diving into the content. Now, within the content, there are three types of people that you're going to reach with this content. There's strangers, right? So those are the people who don't know about you at all. They don't really know about your church. They don't really understand who you are. I'll go to the next screen. So they're strangers, so they don't know who you are. They don't know anything about your church. They might not even be in your city, right? And then there's spectators. So it's often said that before a person comes to your in-person experience, they're going to first visit you online. So those are the people that they're not yet a part of your church, but they're evaluating your church, right? So the first person is the stranger. The second person is the spectator. The third person is the participator. You can also use the word disciple, right? So these are the people that are a part of what your church is doing. These are your congregants, essentially. And those are the three people that the reels are reaching. And now the sermon clip has has a benefit for each person, right? The stranger in marketing, or we will call this top of funnel, right? The spectator, they're already a part. So this is something that we call the engagement journey. What we want to do is we want to take people from stranger to spectator to participator. If you become a part of our Kama Academy community, we also talk about this idea of how to turn people into participators, but actually getting them to become champions of what you're doing, right? So these are all of the different people that this reel is reaching. And just, I'm going to throw some quick statistics at you so you understand why we need to be using social media as a tool to not just promote our ministry, but to do ministry. Okay, Reels. So when I say Reels, I'm mainly talking about Instagram Reels, but they're also attached to Facebook. Reels have over 2.335 billion monthly active users, right? Reels and TikToks are perceived as being essentially the same thing by 80% of Gen Z. So now you're understanding this is important because I'm going to tell you what social media you should be posting on. In the first quarter of 2023, TikTok generated around 247 million downloads. And then the next thing, 90% of global advertisers will increase their investment in short form video. So I tell you all of this to sell you on this idea of why your church needs to transition to short form video content. Right. Now, the thing about all of these platforms, if we were to answer the question, okay, Dennis, what platform should I be posting on? You can post on all of them, right? You can post the same piece of content on Instagram Reels, Facebook Reels, YouTube Shorts, and TikTok.
Now, hey, Dennis, so just real quick, I know in the past, people have taught, hey, make it different for each platform. Make it slightly different from Instagram to Facebook to YouTube. But you're saying that we can use the same content and cross-populate.
That's right. So quick disclaimer, I've actually been saying this for years. And let me explain to you why I've been saying this for years. The reason why I've been saying this for years is because for a lot of us, it's hard to get one platform right. So then to try to go and create a bunch of different content for all of these different social platforms, it's just not sustainable, right? And for me, what I tell my communication directors and people that I work with, we need consistency, right? But now the reason why this is the biggest opportunity is because now we don't have to post different posts on these platforms. Because remember, now we have moved to something called the discovery graph algorithm, meaning that the platforms are not pushing the content necessarily out to all of the people in your community. They're pushing it out to a wide audience, to people who they think might engage with that piece of content, right? So I'll give you an example. I have seen reels that were posted on Instagram get 100 likes, and then that same piece of content was posted on TikTok and it got 30,000 likes, right? I have accounts that I've managed. We've seen over 1 million in reach within 30 days on a new account, right? For an account called a Man Church. So this is the opportunity that we now have, is we can just focus on the same pieces of content for all of these different platforms, right? And see growth over time. So now, so far, as it relates to the sermon clip.
Another question for you, Dennis, kind of relating to the same thing. Do you have a scheduler or some sort of social media tool that you recommend for posting on different platforms?
Yes. So there's a bunch of different tools that you can use. The first one that's very popular is one called Hootsuite. Hootsuite is one of the ones that have been around for a very long time. So actually we have a PDF where I have a list of some different social media schedulers you can use. Also Meta, Facebook has a social media scheduler built in. That's number 2. And then number 3, Canva also has a social media scheduler / planner built in. So those are 3 different ones. Now, the one that I use is one called Metricool. That's METRICOOL. Metricool. So one strategy is you can take the one piece of content that you post on one platform across all of the different platforms. So far, I hope you learn. I hope you learn that the opportunity for churches is that now we can reach more people with the content we already have, right? That's number one. Number two, it's this content that we're posting is relevant to these three different groups. It's the stranger, the spectator, the participator. Number three, as it relates to what social media channels you should be posting on, should you try Threads, should you try these platforms, focus more on consistency and sustainability rather than trying to be everywhere. As it relates to the sermon clip formula, we have talked about the hook, the importance of the hook. And real quick, guys, I just want to say that this framework for the sermon clip formula, it's not just for video, but it's actually a great framework for communication as a whole, right? So it's the hook, it's the content, and the number three, it's the call to action, right? So there's two forms of call to actions within your video. For us, it can be something like a basic call to action could be something like, hey, go watch the whole entire message on YouTube, right? That's a basic call to action, right? That call to action is good, but the better call to action is something along the lines of, for example, let's say if it's a video about 21 days of prayer and fasting, the better call to action could be like, comment prayer, and we're actually going to send you a guidebook to how to properly pray and fast, right? So option B requires a little bit more setup, but what it will do is it will actually get you more engagement. So that's the three forms. So just a quick recap: a good sermon clip, an engaging video, it contains the hook. The hook gets people to stop the scroll. Remember, you have to capture their attention. Then it's the content. That content is appealing to three different groups of people. And then number three, it's the call to action, right? And that's the whole entire sermon clip formula.
So the call to action is that, so you said that there could be a resource that you point to, could be maybe even another sermon, like, or click to see the whole sermon, or, I'm trying to think, like, what are some really quick calls to action? I mean, can you just hit on some of those that you recommend?
For most churches, the most basic call to action within the sermon clip is something along the lines of go watch the whole video, right? But now let's say for example, it's group season and the pastor just preached about community, right? The pastor preached about community. Now, a good example of a call to action could be something along the line. It could be, hey, what the Bible says about loneliness, right? So in the caption, and right after this, we're going to jump into some tools for this, some practical tools you can use. Right in the caption could be something along the lines of like, hey, are you struggling with loneliness? There's a group for you. Comment below, connect, and we'll send you the list of groups in our area, right? So those are whatever call to action you need, or the next step that person needs to take. And remember, everybody has a next step, right? So again, to recap that, the basic call to action will be, hey, go check out the rest of this content. The more advanced piece of the call to action is to tell them to comment something to receive something else, right? Now it's up to you, up to your church to decide what that is.
Now, I would recommend that you define some next steps within the church that are maybe create like a list of 3-4 next steps in the church. Just have them handy. You could even save them, somewhere, and just copy paste them, into some of these, if there's a link or something associated with it. So a lot of times in our brand strategy, when we unpack a brand, we try to identify what are the next steps. Is it, getting to a group, go to our membership class, or serve on a team, those type of things. So we just want to like identify what those are. Bible studies, anything like that you would say, hey, these are viable calls to action, and then be able to maybe just copy paste that into the so the big mistake I feel a lot of churches make is that they don't have a call to action. But the call to action has to come with the idea that we are doing ministry, We don't want something from you. We want something for you. That's the heart behind it. So don't put in there, click this to give, that's not a great call to action. We want something for them.
That's right. That's right. And so that's the whole entire sermon clip formula. So now, real quick, I'm going to touch on, and I know we're covering a lot of content in a short amount of time. But if you're finding this content valuable, just give us a thumbs up in the chat. So now here's the opportunity with sermon clips, especially if you are a busy communication director. So the social media calendar that I recommend for most churches to make this transition from not just, again, promoting ministry, but to doing ministry, it looks something like this, right? This is the most basic one. And again, my goal here is to give you like a practical thing that you can do, not just a bunch of knowledge for you to go figure out yourself.
Hey, Dennis, can you share your screen again? I think we're missing that on our screen.
Yeah, I'm going to share it in a second. I actually closed it down. We're going to get ready to jump into Chat GPT here.
Oh, okay. Awesome.
So the calendar that I recommend is the first post that we want to talk about is something that is called a carousel post. So the two platforms that I recommend your church using is Facebook and Instagram because it covers both audiences. Facebook tends to be the older audience and Instagram tends to be the younger audience. By younger, I mean mid to late, early 30s, late 20s. That's what I usually mean by on the Instagram side. Now, Facebook, that's where you'll see the older demographic. But now if you're cross-posting between Facebook and Instagram, you're seeing the best of both worlds. So the first type of post that I want to talk about, and during the Q&A, I'll actually provide the link for this post, the template that you can actually use. The first post that I want to talk about is actually something called a carousel post. And this carousel post, it should be posted around a Monday. And simply it says this week at your church name. And then what the person does is they swipe through every day of that week and you let them know every single event that's taking place that week. So if Wednesday is man church, you're putting that. Thursday, it's team night, whatever that may be, you are highlighting each event for each day. Now, here's why that post is such a good post, because within one post, you can let everybody know that could be like your bulletin post, right? You let everybody know what's going on at that church that week, right? And the caption could be something along the lines of, hey, we all have a next step, find yours this week, right? Again, it's just one post letting everybody know what's going on that week. And then I think that your next 3 posts, you should transition into sermon clips because you already allowed everybody to know what's going on. So those sermon clips are just 3 clips from that past Sunday's message, right? Now, in terms of what tools you can use for this, you can use a free tool called CapCut. That's CapCut. This is assuming that your church doesn't have a creative team or you are the creative team. You can use a tool called CapCut. The best thing about CapCut is it's a free tool that your church can do. So you download that sermon video, you upload it into CapCut, and you identify the best clips. And you're able to do all of the captions and everything from there. This is something that we actually dive deeper into in our Calm Academy community. But that's one free tool. Another free tool that you can use to actually create these clips with is Canva. A lot of people don't know that Canva is actually a video editor within itself. So the two tools that I recommend if your church wants to start actually creating these clips, if you're not doing it already, you can use CapCut because it's free, and you can use Canva because it's free. Now, if your church has an Adobe subscription, you can use things like Premiere Pro. But if that's not the case, I recommend CapCut and I recommend Canva. Michael, you have anything you want to touch on real quick?
No, I think that's good. You can probably just keep going with the tools. That sounds good.
All right. So again, I know, guys, this is a lot of content, but I'm just in this hour, we're just trying to give you as much as we can to so you guys can keep on running. So
Hey, I guess there's one thing in the chat. I'm trying to go ahead and place the tools that Dennis is talking about. So that's why I was kind of filling in there as he's talking. So Canva, CapCut, Monday, do carousels, stuff like that. Just check the chat if you want to get some of those notes.
CapCut is pretty user friendly, and they have a mobile app as well. CapCut is pretty user friendly, and they have a mobile app. We at Sermon Clips, we also have a subscription for churches where we do the sermon clips, and we provide them the Tuesday of that week. But it's something, if you have bandwidth, you can definitely do yourself by downloading the footage and using something like CapCut or Canva to edit it. So I talked about the framework of social. So by now we should kind of understand what the social landscape looks like right now. So now I want to move into how to, one, use ChatGPT to help us within content creation. And in fact, in 2 weeks from now, we're actually going to do a deep dive into AI as a whole. And that's going to be another free call. So I encourage you guys to be on the lookout for that. We're going to spend a lot more time into AI. So now, if you don't know what ChatGPT is, ChatGPT is essentially a software that was released by a company called OpenAI. And what ChatGPT does, it brings AI in our hands. Now, for you to understand what AI is, artificial intelligence, a lot of people think that this is something new. In reality, we've already been using AI for a very long time. If you've ever said something like "Hey Siri" or "Hey Google" or "Hey Alexa," I know the two people I depend on is Jesus and Siri. Come on, somebody. If you've ever asked like "Hey Siri," "Hey Alexa," any of these things to do something for you, that is an example of AI. Right? So we've already been using AI. When you go on Amazon and they recommend things to you, that's AI, right? Now, what OpenAI has done is they brought AI into the hands of the everyday person, right? So now we all have artificial intelligence in our hands. So now with ChatGPT was a tool that was released and where it's generative AI. Meaning that you can talk to it like you're talking to a human and get it to do certain tasks for you. So by a show of hands, quick thumbs up, actually just yes or no, have you heard of ChatGPT? Actually, no, have you used ChatGPT before? Let's just do a quick yes or no in the chat. No, okay. If you can read those out, Michael, I'm gonna.
Yeah, we have yes all the time. 3 thumbs up. Have heard of it, but have not used it. Too much of a control freak. So kind of a mixed bag. About half have said yes, about half have said no. Just about everybody has heard about it. I think we've all kind of seen it on the news. It's kind of everywhere. So a mixed bag of people that have used it.
All right, so this is ChatGPT. So the way that you access ChatGPT is by going to chat.openai.com, and you're gonna see, and when you sign in, there is a free version to this, and there's also a paid version. So now ChatGPT, again, we're not gonna spend too much time on this, but ChatGPT, you just speak to it like a human. So what are some of the things that you can do with ChatGPT? Well, one of the things that you can do is you can get it to generate social media captions for you, right? So I can say something like, here's a great example. Our church, Oceanside Church, has Serve Day this week. Can you provide an engaging social, see, I even spelled engaging wrong, but we're going to leave it. Engaging social media caption for Instagram. right? So here I'm just giving, there's not much prompt engineering to this. We're not going to cover too much of that right now, but I just want to show you what happens when we just give it a basic prompt. Oh, join us this week as we dive deep into a wave of love, faith, and community at Oceanside Church. Let's make waves together as we serve our community and shine bright as a beacon of hope. Come be a part of something greater than yourself and experience the joy of serving others. See you there, right? So we can see by putting in that input in less than 15 seconds, it already gives us the social media caption, right? And again, I just want to give you some use cases. I want to give you some ideas. We're not going to spend a lot of time on prompt engineering and how to write the best prompt on this call because we're running out of time here. But I'm just going to use this as an example. Then we can say, okay, this is awesome. Turn this into a newsletter for our church members. And then what's going to happen is it's going to start generating a newsletter. So then it gives you the subject line, it gives you the right. So now the goal of these tools, again, and what we want to do is we don't want to take everything that it says word for word, but what we want to do, again, it's a tool in our toolbox to help us save time so we can ultimately do ministry. Michael, you have any thoughts overall on ChatGPT as it relates to content creation?
Yeah, I think the main thing is what you just said. Like it's not going to be perfect, so you're going to need to read it, like prompt it, yes. And the better you are at prompts, like the better the results you're gonna get. And then what you'll find is that over time you become really creative in your prompts. Like give me 10, you'll know how to use it a little bit better. Read through the prompts though. Make sure that the answers are your answers that you want, and then you can copy and paste it into an email or something along those lines. Just a tip that I like to do is I have another tool called Grammarly.com, and I just take the copy and paste it into Grammarly. It kind of fixes punctuation, spelling, stuff like that. Also gives me a chance to proofread the content to make sure it's our voice,
Right.
and that type of thing. And then I copy paste it into like an email to send out to everybody, or maybe a social media post.
That's right. And the key thing that I would say about AI as a whole, again, just remember that it's a tool. A lot of people have mixed feelings about AI, but it's just another technological advancement that is going to bring a lot of good, and it's going to bring some bad as well. But again, our position here is how do we leverage these tools to point people to Jesus, right? And that's why we use them. So again, in 2 weeks, we're going to do a call where we dive deeper into this. As a communication director, another thing that you can do with this is you can actually take your pastor's sermon notes, and you can copy it into ChatGPT, and you can say something like, hey, give me a list of small group discussion questions. Or you can say, hey, give me 50 small group discussion questions. And you can use it to start identifying small group discussion question. And then you can say, hey, turn each small group discussion question into a social media post. And it's going to do that, right? So again, my goal for this is to show you and give you ideas on how you can use this tool. But 2 weeks from now, we're going to do a call where we dive deeper into ChatGPT. I myself, I'm actually currently in the process of working on something called Church AI, where we're going to put a lot of these tools together for you so you don't have to become a prompt engineer. So that's ChatGPT.
So Mike is asking, are you giving credit to the AI for the content? Any thoughts on credit?
So no, we're not. So I think this dives into the topic of ethics, right? So what the AI is doing, the AI, there's natural language processing within it, and it's been trained on thousands and thousands, hundreds of thousands of data points. So all AI is doing is formulating the text for you. Now, again, what I always tell people is that you're not taking all of this straight on. You're using it as a starting point, but you're going to see a lot of the things that it says it's not 100% accurate, right? So I don't think that anything that it puts out you can use it right on, but it's really just it's really a starting point, not the ending. There's a lot of awesome AI tools as well that allows you to generate images. And right now, because this AI world is so new, there's currently conversation that's going on about um, uh, can you license AI art, right? But so my answer to that is I wouldn't go and give credit to AI for writing this because the goal for using this is to use it as a starting point, not the end product.
Good. So real quick, we're going to wrap it up. We're going to honor your time. We got about 3 minutes to just kind of honor what we said we would do, keep it within about an hour. Dennis, there was a struggle that was submitted earlier when we asked about social media struggles that you might have. And they put in there, they're thinking about content. How do we post content that's spiritually relevant, but not alienating to people who don't attend the church? Any thoughts
Right,
on spiritual content?
right. So I think it's this idea, and I think this is why sermon clips are so important, is because it takes as the supernatural, it takes and it brings in the natural. It takes in spiritual principles, but it also talks about cultural context, right? So that's the idea behind the hook, right? It's your pastor may be talking about a spiritual principle, right? But the reason why we put the hook in the video or on the screen is because we want to translate that spiritual principle to something that can apply to the everyday life. I would say that's the main thing. So the best sermon clips are really at the intersection of faith and culture.
It's good. Well, hey, if there's any further questions, feel free to drop those in. We're happy to hang out a little bit longer to answer those if you wanted to do that. But we are going to start to wrap this up. Again, this is a great forum for us to be able to help serve the Big C Church for all you guys are doing communications across all different states or maybe even outside the United States. We hope to just kind of be your virtual communications director to help you basically get up to speed on different tactics that are working today across the board. Both Dennis and I have been doing this for a very long time, and we're very passionate about finding out what are the latest things that are going to help churches to grow and attract more people. Not only attract them, but how do we help them take next steps in their faith journey, especially within the context of your church. So we want to bring those to you on a regular basis. Like Dennis said, couple weeks out, we're going to be doing a deep dive into AI. We will send out an email and a link for you to register for that, just like we did this time. So be on the lookout for that. Again, our heart is to provide you with some great resources to help you take this further. We have a great platform called Calm Academy where we do some more coaching. In fact, for you guys that are part of Calm Academy, that is a paid membership. It's not very much, so you can check it out if you want to. For you guys that are part of Calm Academy, next week we actually have a call with a great resource that Dennis is putting together just for you guys. We'll tell you more about that as in part of our membership area. But if you want to check that out, go to mycalmacademy.com. All right. Also check out forchurches.com. That's a great resource that we just released. It's brand new. There might be a couple bugs in there, but it's okay. Like, go check it out anyway. It's called forchurches.org. That's where Dennis was talking about. We have a bunch of like social media posts that are available for you. We can just copy paste, and they're just good things to help you go further faster.
Right. This is a again, this is a completely free platform. And sometimes free means that not all the bugs and all that stuff is completely worked out. But what we wanted to do is we didn't try to be perfect with this. We just tried to, hey, how can we put together as much resources that we can to help communication directors win?
Excellent. So a couple quick questions. If you guys have to go, we are so glad you joined us, and we will see you on the next call. Be on the lookout for that. The next scheduled call is going to happen in 2 weeks. Wednesdays, afternoons is typically our time to do that. Thanks again for joining us. Now, for you guys that are hanging out, we have a couple questions. One is there training on how to do reels or clips in Canva? Does Canva have training?
There's no training that I'm aware of on how to do necessarily sermon clips on Canva. But there is training on how to edit videos in Canva. And you
Oh,
can learn a
okay.
little bit more about that.
Yeah, and I think you could hop onto YouTube and find like little tutorials that people have made on how to do that.
Mhm.
In fact, Dennis, that might be something that we can provide too, is just a little bit of a basic training on how to take a
Yeah.
sermon, chop it down using Canva. So that might be something that's coming pretty soon. Like we love getting ideas from you guys, and then we can
Mhm.
create some great resources
For sure.
such as that. Weekly carousel, just one more comment here. We have lots of events each week. Do you summarize or put each individual item?
Yeah. So
Go ahead,
so
Dennis.
in the social media calendar, what I recommend, if your church is going to start making that transition again, not to just promoting the ministry, but to do ministry online, it's limiting all of the events to that one carousel post. And then one of the things that you can do from there, right? And it really depends on the stage that your church is in. If you're a newer, if you're a smaller church and you don't have bandwidth to be on social media all day, then just focusing on making 3 to 4 posts a week consistently is going to help move you along. If you're a bigger church and maybe you have a team or you have a couple people doing social media, then your church should be posting pretty much every day, right? Once a day. I know accounts that are posting twice a day, right? Because there is a lot of things to post about, but just remember the filter of there's this rule called the 1 in 3 rule. So it's like for every 3 posts, for every 1 promotional post that your church makes, you should have 3 value posts that don't really ask people to do anything, right? Because over time, if we're just telling people to do things, remember, we're entering into a relationship with them. If we're just telling people to do things, then eventually we become white noise. So I would just recommend starting off with that 1 carousel post and then leveraging things like stories for like the daily announcements.
All right, excellent. Well, looks good. Looks like we can close it out here. Thank you guys for joining us today. We look forward to seeing you, all of you members. We'll see you next week. And then for everybody else, we'll hope to see you in a couple of weeks when we dive into the AI topic. And then even beyond that, we have a bunch more topics we're going to roll out. So thanks for joining us on this episode, and we'll see you on the next one.
Awesome. Thank you, everybody.